So, welcome. I'm so happy to see such a great crowd. My name is Lee Davis. I'm the co-director of the Center for Social Design here at MICA with Mike Weichert, who's also here. We're really excited and feel really honored to have a very special guest with us here tonight. And I wanted to actually start before I turn the mic over to Ezio to ask you all just to quickly stand up for a second. So you see the name of the book and the lecture tonight, Design When Everybody Designs, and part of the reason that we partnered with a lot of our colleagues in the design community here to host Ezio was to start to build this community, find other like-minded folks who are really interested in social design, design for social innovation. So I wanted you to just quickly look in your local vicinity for somebody that you don't know and shake their hand and introduce yourself. This is an opportunity to start to make some new connections. All right, I opened a can of worms. Cool. Hopefully you'll connect some more and stay in touch and help build this community. So, for those of you who don't know, the Center for Social Design here at MICA, we're a center within the school. We have a graduate programs. Some of our social design graduate students are here with us. We also run practice-based studios for students across the college from all disciplines to collaborate on social programs together. We have a fellows program that retains some of that talent here in Baltimore to work on big social issues here in the city. And we also run several initiatives out of the center. And so we really all encourage you to visit us across the bridge over in the Lazarus Center and join our Facebook page and learn about other events that are coming up. I also want to do a quick call out to our friends over in the GD Graphic Design MFA program. I know Jennifer is here with us, and also Alan Lupton, who helped us to make this event happen this evening, and we have a really great relationship with them and really enjoy that collaboration, so thanks again. And also to some of our other friends from AIGA Baltimore, AIGA Washington, D.C., Baltimore Design School, Neighborhood Design Center, and AIA Baltimore. I want to thank all of you for coming and really want to keep you all engaged and coming back to MICA. And thanks for helping us to promote this evening's event with Ezio. So it's kind of impossible to introduce someone like Ezio Mancini because some of you already know him, and I could go on and on about all of his accomplishments, and the least of which is his new book that's come out. He really is sort of a guru in our space and really a leading thinker in design for sustainability. He founded DESIS, which is a network focused and dedicated on design for social innovation, really building this community on a global scale. He's also a professor, an honorary professor of the Polytechnic in Milan, and also chair and professor at the University of the Arts in London. And is speaking and teaching and lecturing and working with students all across the globe. And so I want to really turn the mic over to him, and I want you to help me welcome Ezio Mancini.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, and thanks to be here. Thanks for the beautiful weather that you have organized for me. I'm very grateful. I know that has been difficult, but you succeeded very well. It was really a beautiful day today, and I like it a lot to be here. And as you know, this one motivation to have this lecture is to present a book. A book. Maybe some of you have done some books. There are different kinds of books. There are some books that you do in a certain moment because you have a special opportunity. And some books that you do because you have worked on a certain subject for a while, for a period. In my case, in this case, it's 10 years. and you try to put in this book what you've learned. So the book that we are talking about today, that is Design When Everybody Design, is it's not said that it's a good book, but for sure it's a book that is a result of a long work, not only mine, but as has been said, it happened to me to be co-promoter of this international network that has been spreading in many places in the world. So it's a kind of reflection of what happens around this topic that is design and social innovation. And as you for sure know, and as you will see, both these two terms, design and social innovation, changed a lot, are changing a lot. So it's been very difficult to make a book because during the time that I was writing, things were continually changing. So it's been a little bit a nightmare. But in any case, the editor at a certain point say, Ezio, you have to finish. So I had to finish at a certain point. And we will be together for 1 hour. I asked to Lee to tell me when it's 30 minutes, so at 40 minutes I finish, and I really want to have a space for a little bit of interaction, even if this place is not the best place for interaction, because I am here on the top of this podium, you are there, but there is no fun on my side to give a lecture if somebody do not react and they don't feel what are you thinking. So I will try to maybe make a synthesis at the beginning of what I want to say, and afterward I will go more in detail. And when it's 40 minutes, I want to finish in any case. So please be very rough, kill me, send something, do something, switch off the audio, make something happen. No, because I'm risky. I am a little bit as Fidel Castro. If I start to talk, it's not given that I finish, so it can be very dangerous. But I will try to contain myself. So let me make a first premise. That is also in some way the explanation of the title of the book. That it's a story that is widely discussed in the book, but I want to anticipate because in my view it's helpful to clarify. We use the term design, and the issue is that today the term design can be used in several different ways, and all of them are really legitimate, but they are quite different. So sometimes in the discussion there could be a misunderstanding because I'm talking about design in a certain way, you are talking in another way, and maybe we do not understand each other, even if both the discussion can be meaningful. So I want to start from this. For some reason, the notion of design and also the use of the term design that when I started my career, my work in this field, the only one that uses the term design were a small group of professionals and maybe the client of this professional. So it was relatively clear. It was a kind of very clear profession, as to say architect, if you want. That is, the architects are architects, they are the client of the architect, they know what an architect do. Nowadays, as you know, the word to talk about design is spread. And in some way, everybody speak or could legitimately talk about their own design capability, their own design attitude, their own design thinking, the way to use design in whatever they do. So we have to spend 2 words about this. Why it's what it is and why it happened. So in my interpretation, design is a little bit as creativity. Everybody has creativity, in principle, and after during the life you can cultivate it or not. So it can remain or you can lose it, but creativity is a human gift. Also design is a human gift. It's a little bit more complicated than creativity because at the core of design there is creativity, but it's a creativity that starts from a critical sense. So human beings are capable to look around to see what will not work and to be critical and imagine, and afterwards, so the critical sense, the creativity, they say, oh, it's like this, but it could be also different. And a kind of practical sense. I don't know if it makes sense in English, but in any case, the fact that if you have an idea that cannot be done, you are a dreamer and could be nice, but you are not using your design capability. To be a design capability, you have to develop a creativity that, given certain condition, can be realized. So you have to have critical sense. So these three elements, practical sense, critical, capability to critique, to make a critique, capability to imagine something that do not exist, and capability to imagine how to make it real, is something diffused in a normal attitude of people. If it is like this, why we talk about design today and we are not talking about design so much in the past? There is a very, at the end, simple reason. That when we do something, so when we act on the world, we can call it design modality, that I said is very human and normal, but it's not the only modality that we have. We have also another modality that we can, at least I call it the conventional modality, that practically speaking is to do as you have always done, to do as the tradition said that things can be done. And the conventional modality is, in terms of energy, mental energy, much more convenient. So it's easier to do as things have always been done, if it works well. Therefore, if you have a period in which people is not challenged by something that is radically new, normally we wisely, I will say, do as things have always been done, because it works, has been proven that it works. But when the overall context change fast, change at every possible level, as in the reality in which we are now, it happens that you cannot simply do as it has always been done, but you have to switch from the conventional modality toward the design modality. And this is valuable for the individual, for the subject that are individual subject, and there is one of the many definitions of modernity that exactly focus on this. Modernity is when people can design their own biography. That was not given in the very traditional conditions. In very traditional conditions, more or less the way in which you dress, the way in which you eat, the way in which you marry, the way in which you get kids, the way in which you educate your kids, the way even in which you die, was all on the basis of some locally given traditions. When the tradition melt, you don't have something to do as usual, and so you have to design where you want to live, how you want to eat, who you want to marry, how you want to make the kids and educate them, and how you want to die today. So choices that could be, some of them even shallow, but some of them very deep and very dramatic to be taken. But this necessity to choose in a designerly way your biography is valid not only for the individual subject, but also for the collectivity. It's no use to be said that the company could be a company in the past. They do not need to say, I am a design-driven company. If the company say we have a design-driven company, it's because they have in some way to design their own strategy, what they want to be, how they want to do. But it's not only the company, you have the cities. Once upon a day, a city is a city, has not to be designed as a city, if not for some very, let's say, mechanical planning. Now the cities have to define themselves in the competition in between the different cities and make some move to try to be more, I don't like the term, but more competitive with the others. And so the spread of the notion of design has a very good reason. It helped also that the big company as IDEO, at a certain moment, they find this slogan of the design thinking, and they sold it very well. For who is designer know what I'm talking about. But it's not that we talk so much about design thinking because IDEO has been so strong. It's that IDEO is strong, but he or they find a way to talk about a necessity. So they gave a name to something that in some way, for the good and for the bad, we are in the necessity to do. And given that I promised to anticipate a little bit my story, the everybody design is the result of this social innovation. So this diffuse social innovation that create a condition for people to have to find a way to make things, designing them in the way that I'm saying. All the time that you talk about design thinking, design approach, design attitude, you are talking about how you improve the capability of people to be designer of their own biography or their own way of doing and managing a city or managing a company. So there is a huge discussion about that. And in some way, if there are, and I think that there are some people that is not designer here, but they are involved in some social activity, maybe, I don't know if they use or not this word, but they are designing, and maybe if they are now interested in a conference like this, is because they have the intuition that maybe from the design world something can happen that can help them in doing better their own work. So this is, in my view, given that we cannot change, so I'm not discussing if the fact that in the contemporary modernity we are, for the good and for the bad, obliged to design our biography. Once that we recognize this, I think that is very important, this attention on the possibility and the methodology of design. So it's, my view, positive that so many people talk about design. Of course, for somebody, maybe a subgroup of you in between me, I am professionally a designer. So I'm not one person that is an engineer or a CEO or a mayor or a citizen that want to design a little bit better. I am trained as a designer, and I work in a school when I train specific designers. And so we have to shift to another way to talk about design. That is the design of those people that has been specifically trained, or that have, for some reason of their own life, developed a specific capability in designing. And they are the design expert. And there is a whole discussion that we can do about what should be the specific knowledge that the design expert can bring into the society where everybody design. And this is the title of my book, because the first design, it plays with the double meaning of the term design. The first design is the design of the expert, and everybody design is a very diffuse design. And the question is, if the diffuse design is another way to talk about diffuse social innovation, what who is design expert has to do. And what happens is that appear a third way of talking about design that emerge from the interaction between all the different people with different background and different culture and different stories, and some design expert that interacting, they generate a design process. And it's a design process that gets to the result. And the design process is always today a co-design. So it's a process in which different people design together something. And therefore, when you talk about interdisciplinarity and the importance to have design interdisciplinarity and the mix of different culture, you are talking about, in this case, the process. That is a third way of talking about design. So to conclude, there is the design as a normal capability of everybody that could be trained and improved. There is the design of who has been, for the good or the bad, trained specifically, so it's their own definition of what they bring to be designer. And there is the co-design process that is the result of the interaction of all this. I will assume in some way the point of view of the design expert, because this is my point of view, this is my work. So I am a designer in the sense that I'm training, and this is what I do. And the book is in some way assuming this point of view. So it's not a book of sociology. It's a book about, even it's talking about social innovation, but it's a book on how, with the eyes of a designer, you look to social innovation and try to tell a story about what the designer could do if they will be capable to promote social innovation. And I said if we will be capable, because one of the problems today is that in this very huge fast change, the design expert and the place in where the design experts are trained, the school, and also our possible client have difficulties to recognize what could be the capabilities and the role and the culture of the design in the co-design process. So sometimes when the designer, the expert designer, leave the safe activities in which they have always worked to design a product, to design an interior, to design a poster, to design some object, and move as it's emerging toward being people that use their own capability to develop many very different projects, as the one that, for instance, are now, if you have an idea in the students that participate to the social design center, it's difficult for us, expert designer, to have a clear idea what we bring to the very general discussion. And it's very often difficult for our possible interlocutor to recognize what we are bringing. Therefore, there is a very important work that is my motivation, not only because I am designer, I want to protect the designer. I'm convinced that there is something that the category, the group of people that define themselves as designer, if we understood what we could do, they can bring to the co-design process. And we have to do something so clearly that the other recognize us. But this has largely to be done. So it's very open, the possibility. I think that if everybody designs, the need for expert designer increase. Somebody said, when at the beginning of the story, when we started to say, look, practically everybody design, somebody of the design group, of the design expert, say, oh my God, and so maybe we will disappear as design expert. In my view, it's the contrary, because the more people is engaged in design, the more complex are the issues that has to be treated, the more there will be also the need of some expert. If some expert, me and the one in between you that feel to be designer, will be able to understand what to do and how to do it and to present ourselves. So how we develop our tools and our culture. I think that it has been a little bit long, I know, but I told you the story as a whole by the point of view of the specific motivation of this book. But to tell this story, given that the story, in my view, and the theory that I like, cannot float in the air, but has to be related to something practical, to some contents, in this lecture, I will not insist so much on this kind of discussion that we had this morning with a very interesting group of students, but I will say, okay, all this is applied to do what? And the to do what, as a second premise is, it happened now that one of the activities of the designer can be, and it's serious, it's really like this, that we have to design some tools that help the conversation. There are several examples of designers that design tools that help the conversation in the group. So I very modestly try to design a tool, that is this concept map, that should help, for me, the conversation of what I want to say in the remaining period of time that I had, without losing the complexity. And this is one of the very important points. So we have to learn how to navigate in the complexity, and I would say we have to learn the complexity is a positive word. It's good that the world is complex, because it means that it's rich of opportunity, rich of unforeseeable possibilities. And so the difficulties for me and for everybody is not to try to reduce the complexity to some kind of scheme, but to accept the complexity and to be capable to navigate. So the metaphor of sailing into the complexity, in my view, is the best way to say what everybody, in particular the designer, should do. And so at my very little scale, I present a kind of constellation of words, I could tell you something about each one of the words that are there, but for me at the moment it's enough to say this is a constellation of words that I have as my background, and afterward there is a particular journey that I will try to do together in the time that remain. For instance, the book is not covering everything. Of course, you see here that there is a crisis. So the crisis is the motivation. So why so many of us are driven to try to find new solution? Because there is a crisis. The book does not talk so much about that, but obviously it starts from this crisis. And if we are driven in doing something, it's because we hope to go toward a sustainable society. And there could be, and there are books that talk about what we know today about the sustainable society. That is not so much in my book. But of course, the book is a way to put together some strategy that permit to move from where we are, the crisis, and hopefully to go in the direction that we wish to get, that is sustainability. And so the core of the story of the book, it's around, as is also in the title, or the subtitle, social innovation. And the first chapter is about giving an idea of what could be meant, or at least I intend for social innovation, and what I call emergent design, to underline that design is changed. It's the same design is changed by the social innovation. So it's not only the design is an agent of change on the world, but the world is changing design. So what we have to be capable to recognize what is design today, and to make it simple, normally I say that we have been trained in the design of the 20th century. There was a totally diverse world than the present one, and we have to be capable to recognize what I call the emerging design, that is the new design that is appearing in the new context. That is not a new discipline. It's not as, say, service design or strategic design that are discipline. I'm talking about the fact that everything that is related to design in some way is changing. So we have to move from the multiple crises, and we have to hope, and we have to see, or better, the book, let me say, propose that in this very dark, because we are not living in the world that is so good, frankly speaking. So in average, we are living in the world that is very bad and is going, as an average, worse and worse. But nevertheless, I think, and this is the positive side of the story, that in the complexity of our world, where there are several traps that I'm not talking now with you, but there are and they are terrible, and they are powerful, but there are somebody that is in some way showing that it's possible to escape from these traps. And those people are the ones that are in some way creating some local discontinuity. This is my way of telling. So somebody that for some reason do something that was not foreseen. So the first people in this city that decided to reconsider bicycle, maybe this is not new anymore, but who started to say, look, maybe we have to go by bicycle because bicycle at the end of the day is the best way to move, they create a local discontinuity. So it's not incremental. You have to leave a certain idea that was dominant and take another one. So when people make this kind of shift, they say, I'm fed up of eating what is the normal food that I find in a normal market, and I want to go to the farmer market. It's not incremental. It's a change in your mentality. The people that decide not to be cultivating the maximum of individuality, and they decide it could be good to compromise a little bit of your pseudo personal freedom to do things with the other, are making a discontinuity because they are doing something that is in some way very diverse from what has been the profile of the consumer as has been consolidated for a long time. So luckily, and I am a designer, as a designer I always say you have to be a kind of professional optimist, so I have to bet on the possibilities. There are in this moment in the world hundreds of thousands, millions of people that have done this kind of shift. And our challenge, and before the challenge is our ethical choice. We have to be capable to recognize them and to say what attitude we will have. We can say, bullshit, they are a small group of people, they are irrelevant. Look, the big corporation, big finance, what they can do. They are a group of people nostalgic of a past that could not exist. It could be said, somebody tell it. Or you can choose and say, maybe they are the beginning of the future. Because everything that will be the future, at a certain point, it was small. So the fact to be small could be, for somebody, a condition forever, and for somebody else, the smallness is to be a seed of something that can grow. And luckily, at the moment, this metaphor of the seed that can grow is also obsolete because things move very fast. So when it happened to me to start to make this kind of thoughts and to work in this direction, really, for instance, in an audience like this, if we were 20 years ago, maybe somebody had really to explain, to show the cases and to tell you singular story to convince that these people exist. Now I'm sure, maybe we will see, maybe I hope not, but I'm sure that you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So you have an idea that there are a lot of people working in the neighborhoods to increase the quality of the neighborhood, making happen different things to try to reestablish relationships. You know that in the issue about food, that in my view is the most dynamic one, the perception of what could be food is changed totally, even if the junk food is still the mainstream. But there are a growing number of people wherever in the world that if you talk about another possibility of the future for what regards food and agriculture, they immediately understand that there is another possibility. This is I choose to use example from many places in the world simply to say, look, of course I'm talking with a Western attitude to Western people, but there is a kind of spirit of the age. So it's happening in some way with different characteristics, but it's happening everywhere. It's happening in the Western countries, it's happening in the south part of the world, it's happening in China, it's happening in India, it's happening in Africa. You have people that rediscover the way to collaborate around housing. There is the whole issue about the social services and the possibility to find solutions to very difficult problems through the capability to collaborate. And I can assure you that, for instance, in Europe, when we have in bad shape a kind of welfare that you don't have. You are in the wilderness by this point of view. But we had a kind of welfare that in some places also worked, but this welfare is in crisis for several reasons. And the interest toward a new idea of how you can organize a service, what could be the relationship in between the state and the people, is changing, and there is an interest also a very high level because it's very difficult otherwise to face an issue as elderly population, how you can manage in a more normal way. The state offers services for the elderly, but if the elderly become more numerous than the young people, the traditional way of doing the service cannot work. So you have to imagine something different, and the shift, the local change, disruption, is to think that maybe the elderly are not only needy, but the elderly have also capability, and instead of building on the problem, you build on the asset, creating conditions to collaborate, to do something together, to help each other, etc., etc. And there are hundreds of examples around in the world that show that this is possible. There is all the story about the distributed production that permit maybe in the way in which it's now, very often they produce only awful and unsustainable gadgets, but at the same time they are the maker, the Fab Lab, this kind of techno-social movement is changing the idea of what is the production, so it's very interesting. Now, trying to accelerate this path, they are so diverse, but they have something in common. What they have in common, they are, the one that I mentioned at least, are mainly bottom-up initiative. At a certain point, they need also the institutions, but it's very important the role of the bottom-up initiative. They are all not ideological, mainly ideological, but they are mainly to solve a problem, even if they do in a way that there is a very deep cultural and social dimension, but it's not, as I was mentioned today, the hippie communities that were an ideology that was applied to make something happen given the ideology. Those people are all there because they want to solve the problem of the elderly, the problem of the kids, the problem of food, the problem of mobility, and doing this around this concrete problem. And the solutions, they try to reorganize the community. And what I like to say, they go beyond the specific solution. And this is, in the remaining time that I have, what I want to say. So they are not only solving individual problems, but the way in which they do it help in some way contrast the trap in which we still are. They could be, they are less consumeristic because they discover other kind of value. So, as I think they will not have the time to develop, but in any case, they are proposing a quality of life that is not based so much on having things, but having good relationships. And they are rebuilding the relationship not only between the people, but between the people and the places. And they are at the same time open, and so they avoid the risk of having groups that are antagonistic one with the other ones, as unfortunately is one of the traps, the dramatic, tragic trap that we have today, that the need of community is deviated toward antagonistic community that start from ISIS and up in what is happening in Europe, unfortunately in many places, and maybe also here. So at the same time, what they do, they anticipate possible future. They are showing that it's possible to do things in a certain way that is not the mainstream. So they are not only somebody that tell you a story about an hypothetical future that could be with this character. They exist. Maybe they are not the majority, but they are concrete people that today, in the given condition, are capable to organize things in a different way. So for the designers, they are not only promoting ideas, they are presenting prototypes. Prototypes means you organize the thing that you show that something can work. So all these cases are not only ideas, but are working prototypes of possible future. Afterward, we know that the prototype is never the final product. So also this community is not that we have to think that a sustainable society will be simply putting together a lot of these little groups and you have the sustainable society. When they will be developed from this original initial phase to a more mature one, for sure they will change, we will change. But nevertheless, they are not only ideas, they are something that work. And what they prototype are some elements that we have in the present society that is very interesting. So when we started to talk about sustainability, the only thing that we knew about sustainability was that it had to be different from the mainstream one. In my view, and largely thanks to this original idea that emerged in the social innovation, there are some pillars of sustainability that are already sufficiently clear and could be give the direction toward to go. So in some way, this group create a vision based on some prototype that indicate a direction on which many others can work. Now, given that I want to try to go toward the end, I don't want to discuss all those points, but for sure there is something related to the new infrastructure that they could be called the distributed systems. And the distributed system is the contrary of the vertical hierarchical system that you have known until now. And there are very good example. Now so both in energy, in services, in agriculture, as I said, in the production, as I said, and the result is that we have already, from the winning example of the distributed computing to the distributed power generation that is practically here by the technological point of view, to the distributed production, where maybe the maker at the beginning, to a distributed economy, that is all the discussion in which the planner now are talking about the territory moving from project, moving from the locality in a different way. And this possibility, it's a possibility to see a different notion of infrastructure conceived as a network of small things. And this is going to change the idea of the very old idea of the economy of scale, that to reinforce yourself, you have to grow. In the distributed system, to reinforce yourself, you have to have better links. So the small is not necessarily small when you are in a network society. And this creates more resilience, increase the resilience of the system. Because as you know, in general, the vertical systems are fragile and the horizontal systems are more resilient. So it's only to say that behind the scene of this small group of the social innovation, we can start to see something that is a new environment, a new ecosystem that could be based on this potentiality of the distributed things. But it's very important to know that this kind of technologies that are at the base of the distributed system cannot be improved without a social innovation. Just to give an example, if you have a good police, you can impose a new nuclear power plant. You send the army, you clean everything, and you put your bloody nuclear power plant. If you want to diffuse solar energy in the roof of the houses, it's not an issue that you can do with the police. People have to be convinced. So the most the system, also the technological system is distributed, the most it asks for a very deep interaction in between the technical innovation and the social innovation. So there is a link in between how some new technology permit to have distributed system and how the society has to change to integrate and to promote this new technological possibility. And escaping the other one, the final is that we can see the culture of the distributed system, that you can name it in different way. I call it cosmopolitan localism. That means the idea cosmopolitanism is we don't want to be all the same. It will be a disaster to be all the same, not only because it's boring, but because it will be fragile. If we want to be resilient, we have also to be very diverse. But at the same time, we want to avoid the risk to be antagonistic. And so historically, in many places in the world, we have had some magic moment in which diverse people had the capability to live together. And this, in my view, is the perspective that we have to search for. So to be local, because at the end of the day, it's in the locality that there is the richness of the human being, the richness of the interaction in between people, but at the same time to be capable to have this locality that is at the same time open to the other. And how to manage this difficult equilibrium in between being local and at the same time being open and global, this is the cultural dimension on which many of us, probably all of us, especially the designer, should work. The capability to blend the two things, to find how I am local and at the same time I'm capable to be open to the other, to the diverse, and so to establish a dialogue in between different groups and not what is so simple that to define my identity, I close myself in a cage, as it's happening, unfortunately, very much. So this is the very important point of the core of what we have to do at the end of the day. Is we have to rebuild, to do some of the main problem could be seen as a kind of desertification. Desertification, not only the normal, traditional, biological one, but the desertification in terms of culture and sociology. So you eliminate, so a certain, not only of the old model, but some of the new model are in some way eliminating a lot of all the social and cultural infrastructure that we had. The people is considered one by one. Maybe they have also some shallow social network, so they have the Facebook, but practically very individualized and detached by the place. So you have individual people floating in the social networks. To rebuild community that are not the community of the past, are the community that are the community capable to live and to flourish in the new environment, and to build the community in relation to some space that when it's the space of a community, it becomes, at least in my language, a place. Because we all, in any case, live in a space. But if the space has no meaning, it's not a place. A place is a space with meaning. And how you build the meaning of the space? You build the meaning of the space because there is a group of people that have reason to talk about the space. And therefore, there is a kind of link in between a community that builds itself and building itself have some reason to discuss about where they are, and so they create the place. And at the turn, the place reinforces the community. The designer, I conclude in 1 minute just to show you this. The designer can do a lot. I've not needed to talk about design until now, but I think, I hope at least, this is my intention, to have told you a story that is told not by the point of view of a philosopher or the point of view of engineering or the point of view of a politician, even if all those people could play and should play a very important role, but look into something that is related to what a designer should do, and in some way offer some viable interface on which we could work. And in some way there is a kind of strategy, so we want to go from the crisis to sustainability. But instead of, so probably there are different strategies to do it. No, probably, for sure there is a different strategy. The one that I propose is the strategies that is called design for social innovation. Because at the end of the day, the way in which I propose it, design for social innovation, is a strategy to move towards sustainability, leveraging on something that already exists. So look into existing resources. So our starting point is that the multiple crises create the local discontinuities, as I said. And the local discontinuities create new idea of how to live. And the new idea of how to live can be incremented, upscaled, outscaled, synergized, and so in some way they can move from being seed toward being something more strong. And all this, luckily or hopefully, can introduce and consolidate the 4 pillars of a sustainable society. So you have a kind of trajectory that could be seen moving from where we are in the social innovation, from the social innovation, reinforcing the social innovation, and reinforcing the social innovation, creating the precondition for a sustainable society. And this is not something you have to do alone, but there are actors, there are human resources that can do it. And at the beginning, they could be creative community, the heroes, the start, and afterward they can consolidate in more organized, collaborative organizations, sorry for the repetition, and afterward at a certain point you need the institutions that are capable to understand and to in some way have a new idea of governance that include the people organized, that is quite new. And to be designed for social innovation is not a specific discipline. It's not that when we said there is the eco-design against the other design, it's simply the design of future. The only way in which a decent designer can be is to try to operate in this new context and to do whatever design can do. As if you are a graphic designer as a background, product designer, service design, strategic design. There is something that you can work, and there is no one way of doing it. So you can have a moment in which nothing can happen, still happens, and so you can have what is called design activism. There are a lot of colleagues that are talking about design activism that is similar to a kind of guerrilla. So you start to make something happen. You create some noise because everything is so quiet. So you have to make happen something. But of course, when you already have a community, it's not the case that you make some noise. The case is that you work with the community. So it's a story about collaboration with the community, doing things together, having an empathy, working together. But to work with the community is not the only way in which you can reinforce, because the communities to survive and to flourish need an environment, need an infrastructure. So you can work for the community to create the infrastructure, mapping, creating a video, making some different kind of tools that we can use to create a more favorable environment. And finally, you have to help, we, designers, have to help in creating a new culture. And the creation of new culture, again, in my view, is not something that has to start from zero. We can collaborate in creating new narratives. That is what we have to do. It's not the only one. We have to do all this, including as a very important role to help in creating new narratives, but the narrative are not to be totally invented by us, because if we look very attentively what the social innovation is telling us, we can see that they are talking about, if we can read what they do, they are working in a different conception of time, discovering the quality of an ecology of different times. They are rediscussing the space, reconsidering the notion of the local. Most importantly, they are rediscussing the quality of the relationship, introducing the value of the social goods or the relational goods. They are rediscovering the value of work as a way in which you can express yourself. So if we look very attentively by the cultural point of view, what the social innovation is telling us, it's already there, the beginning of a narrative that at the end of the day, and this is really the end, has to be a narrative of a new prosperity. Because one of the big weaknesses of everybody that has spoken about sustainability until now, included myself, is that the narrative was the narrative of reduction, was the narrative of the future in which you have to have less, is the narrative of the transition towns in which you have to change because there will be the catastrophe. But a new society that we hope to promote or co-promote have to have a larger vision, a positive vision. 7 billion people have to have the hope, not to reduce, but to live better. And so this community are telling us the possibility of prosperity that is based more on the relational goods. And the relational goods are, by definition, without limit. More than that, the relational goods are more people practice relational goods, the better it is. So the more people use, let's say, these goods, the better it is. So we have the possibility, looking to the good signal that come from the society, to build this narrative of prosperity. And on this point, I leave you to the discussion. Thank you. Okay? So, boss, what happened now? Eh?
Anyone? Question? Comment? Anything make you angry, happy, upset?
Hi, good evening. Oh, that's quite loud. Um, good evening, everyone. My name is Sasha. My question was about, I'm here, hello. Thank you for coming to speak with us. I just had a question about the portion you talked about with that vertical systems are fragile, and the point is to diffuse and to widen them. And I work on the community level, and so social innovation is very important to me. I particularly work with food and using food as a sustainability strategy, but we use a lot of social innovation. But we're in talks right now to widen our network and to be innovative across those spectrums, but then there's an issue of trust that comes in as we bring on more partners and build more sites. And so my question is, how do you remedy that when you are attempting to build a sustainable future, and knowing that the wider the net is, the more effective you'll be, but the more people you bring in, it seems the weaker the human bonds are, even if the work is getting stronger. So how do we remedy that?
Well, it's for sure a big question, and I repeat it to be sure that I understood, because I am a poor Italian that speaks in Italian English, so sometimes I can understand, sometimes not. But if I well understood, you say you can start with a small community, and everybody is very nice, very collaborative, and everything works well. We are all friends, and we control each other. There is a trust based on the fact that we know each other, and this is the first stage. This idea becomes successful, start to grow, and all the relationships change, and you don't know what will happen at the end. Maybe it's not anymore the same at the beginning. Was this a question?
If we're starting at the individual level or with a partner and we trust them and we have this beautiful design idea, say you want to build a biohedge in a community, right? And build a nice green space around that. And it's just you and your partner and it's fine. But then you want this biohedge to extend around the entire community. So it's not just your block anymore. It's every street that's within that block, and I then have to form a relationship with my neighbors, and that's kind of scary. So how do I build the program and diffuse, but still in having to build trusting relationships with other people, even though I know that if we collaborate, something's great gonna happen?
I think that you said better, but I imagine that I had understood. I could, the easiest question is, you put your finger on the issue about trust. Yes? And the issue about trust is the big issue of our societies. Because in the moment in which the modernity brings us to be hyper-individualized, so we don't have the tradition of trust of the old good or bad time. And for some reason, we have a crisis in the trust on the vertical organizations. So the issue about trust probably is the issue that is the core of every attempt that we can do in trying to rebuild the fabric of our society. Given that I have not given you an answer, I only said that yes, but as you know, sometimes when you have very clear the problem, you can also start to search for the solution. So we have to know that our societies have a crisis of trust. And we can say, who has to work to reestablish the trust? Many different, practically every different actors. But we can ask, can the designer contribute in creating this kind of rebuilding of the trust? This is a question that we can ask ourselves. I would say, and also I had some PhD students working on how we build the trust today, when the traditional trust of the traditional village or the traditional community for some reason is not anymore there. And there are different kinds of strategies, if you want, that is from creating groups that are sufficiently small, and afterward connecting small groups, And it's proven, there is also kind of scientific proof that we cannot have direct relationship with more than 150 people. I don't know if you've ever heard this number. And so this could be a way. The way could be transparency. So to have the possibility to know each other, not directly, but through the fact that everything is very transparent. And this could be done. So when you organize a restaurant and you open the kitchen, all the restaurant now, you can see the people that are cooking. This is a strategy of trust. Given that I will not know what happened in the kitchen, because I don't know this place, if I make an open kitchen, everybody can see it. So it's a very first level way of trying to be in trust, to give visibility to what we are doing. You can create trust through reputation. And this is what in the network exploded, from TripAdvisors to the reputation that you can have when you are in Amazon or in Uber. And so the combination of this, a discussion of how we can regenerate trust, is one of the big issues that we have today. Afterwards, I use this last example of the trust in the net that is very interesting in my view, and we are designers, so it's open. And I pose you the question. You all know Uber. Is good or is bad? In my view, Uber represents the extreme of what you said. The beginning of Uber was a small, nice group of people that made carpooling in between friends. And it's remaining a little bit like this for several years. And at a certain point, something changed. Somebody had been capable to design a platform that works so well that, as you know, Uber is a company that boomed in the last year. And in the moment now, you don't have the small group of nice people that are making carpooling, and they know each other, and they are totally coherent with the story that I told. And at once you have this monster, you can ask yourself what has happened. And probably this is one point behind your question. So given that it's an innovation, you know the beginning, but you cannot exactly know the end. And for me, to finish now this answer, this is design. So it's not said. I don't like Uber so much for several reasons. But it's not said that the only evolution from a small community carpooling that reinforces itself and creates something that is more accessible, more large, has to be Uber. Uber has been designed like this. Maybe, I don't know who designed the Uber, and so maybe they was also in good, maybe they even didn't imagine that it could be so successful. So maybe it exploded in their own hands, beyond their own expectation. But if it is like this, it has been designed to be like this. And so maybe in the same way that we have Uber, we could have something else that is capable to be more diffuse, accessible, to create a kind of fabric or way of using mobility, because Uber use the asset of existing car or existing people capable to drive. So by a certain point of view, it's very coherent with what I said. It was a little bit, it was a longer answer to your question, at least a little bit, yes? Thank you. Somebody else?
Question? Oh, you had to be on the other side of the room.
Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm so glad you're here tonight. Thank you for your common sense. I'm excited with your term design activism. That was one of the big aha moments. And I think of our current state of fear wars and neo-tribalism, and how you say that design activism can set us free in the ways that are so optimistic and so exciting. I think of older societies, even in Italy, where people are in the town square arguing and fussing and discussing and really working as a community to massage where the town wants to go, agriculture, architecture, space. My question for you is your organizer, does it describe today's post-industrial society, or is this sort of a truism of all times?
If the question was only if it is today, in my intention at least is today. And if we go back where there was the arrows, it's let's go to where there are the arrows. They could be maybe misleading, because if you think the arrow, you think that are different phases. Where, for me, we have at the same time in different area, you can work there where there is the local discontinuities, and you have the heroes that are doing something that has never been done before. And if you as a designer are there, you work as a design activist. But even though I could be positive toward, I like the story, and also in some way I also always been very politically committed, so I feel very near to the attitude of this activism. You need to have what in our language is a strategic design attitude to understand when you have to be a designer activist, or where you have to be a design activist, and where not. Because if you have already a community that work very well, the issue for a designer is not to make noise, it's to help the community. And if you have already several communities that work well, maybe your work is to create a background, an infrastructure that working for the community create an environment in which this good idea can flourish. So when I say there is no one way of promoting this story, is because we can, depending from the specificity of the place and the topic, you can work at different levels and in different way. So there are people as you that, and after you can choose in which way you want to work, but you cannot work in the same way everywhere. Because if you want to work with the community, and there are no community at the moment, you cannot work with the community. On the other side, if you imagine that there could be a new infrastructure, and you have the chance to have a very interested and positive institution that follow you, because somebody also in the institutional world can be very positive, you have to learn how to work with the institution to create conditions that at the end can generate a more favorable environment for the communities. So strategic design is something that is the basis, and beyond the term, it means capability to build your brief, capability to understand the conditions, the partners, where are the resources, and depending on that, you can decide what you want to do. Is it clear? Sufficiently clear? I mean, clear is not clear, but in any case, it's an answer. For me, what is really important is try to say, sometimes I'm very polemic with somebody, there is not the design for sustainability, the eco-design, the design for social innovation, as opposed others. This is an issue for all possible designers. There are so many different ways to participate. If we really imagine that we want to change, not we want to change, the society will change thanks to the effort, there will be the space for the one that in his own character is an activism and will do a kind of the guerrilla design to make something happen, and something else that is very empathic and has the capability to work with the community and work in a way that is more similar to a social worker, and the one that is a little bit more a traditional designer is capable to make a fantastic website, or to make some mapping, or to make something that could be helpful for already established community. So we have to understand who are we, what we are capable to do, and also what we like to do, because we have to have fun, at least, in doing what we do. And afterward, to understand where and if we find condition in which our capabilities can be applied. And they are a palette of different ways today. And if you work in food, for instance, today, the food is the most advanced sector. So as I said before, everybody now recognizes that we could move away from the junk food and from the industrial, heavy, energy-intensive agriculture. If you we use the example this morning, if you work, for instance, in residential settlement, this is very hyper difficult. If you start to discuss about different way of organizing your home, it's very difficult that you find people that accept to really change something in the structure or the way in which our flats are built. Because in the case of home, we are still in a phase in which mainly we should start, because it's not yet started, a kind of guerrilla in creating new opportunity to do things together, to share some services, etc. Because there are not so many communities that at the level maybe of the neighborhood a little bit more. But really when you go to how we organize our home, that is totally unsustainable both physically and socially and culturally, there are no idea. We are still reproducing model that has been built 2 centuries ago.
Oh, you're making it easy for me.
Hi, thank you for your talk. My name is Mark, and I live in DC, and I work with DC Plus Acumen and Social Solutions. And every month we have a workshop called the Social Innovation Lab, which we do at Busboys and Poets Brookland every 4th Sunday of the month. And the goal of this workshop, or the goal of this event, is to bring together a diverse group of people to design solutions to local problems. So you mentioned in your talk that, to get buy-in from the community for the social solution or for the innovative solution, there has to be a paradigm shift. I think you mentioned like people had to think, okay, I don't have to drive, I can now, participate in a bike share. So my question to you is, how do you facilitate that sort of paradigm shift among these type of communities?
Doing what you do. Sorry. The basis is doing what you do. So to creating, as the background is to avoid to generalize. So not to talk about the people in general, the politician in general, the company in general, but to say there are many different people behaving in different ways. And so you start, at the contrary of what could appear, not to work, now I exaggerate, do not misunderstand me, but not starting from the poorest. So the poorest has to be helped, but the poorest could be so poor that maybe they do not have energy and possibility to be resources for change. So you have to start where there are resources for change. That can be poor or not so poor, it's not so important. Wherever there are somebody that for whatever reason has a drive to make things differently in the direction that we take the responsibility to say that is a good direction, is the starting point. And so you create a prototype. And the prototype are much more valuable whatever kind of idea and words. So the possibility to change, and I will not do it, but also the theory of the complex system say the same thing. So if you have a very complex system, the solution is not a big complex solution. So complexity is always there, but it's not a big solution. The complex system, exactly because it's big, asks for small local solutions that start to create the condition to change the biggest one. So the idea of working on the small things has also a very, if you want, scientific background in the theory of how the complex system change. And they change because internally something starts to happen in a way that break what had been considered as normal. So the first thing is this one. What I can add, and this also, I don't want to be misunderstood, but we are in between colleagues, so I think that at least you will understand my intention. It's not that the complexity of the world can only be reduced to many small solutions. There are also some general framework that has to be thought and proposed that are mainly cultural. So in my view, all the movement that we have seen here included a designer that has worked in this direction, so included myself, has been a little bit solutionist. That means the idea that everything can be reduced to a number of problems and every problem can be solved. So the risk to be misunderstood is that I firmly think that we have to start from small problems and try to solve it, because this gives the beginning of a different way of doing. But at the same time, we have to develop what was here before, a culture that gives the very general cultural framework in which people can recognize what they do, and the possibility to multiply the good small example is given largely by the fact that the small example are also capable to create a larger view, and many other people can recognize themselves in the larger view and move in the same direction. To make an example that is, as all the example could have some limits, but in my view, everybody knows and is clear. If you consider the movement of the community garden in New York, it started more than 30 years ago. And it started with guerrilla gardening. And it started squatting. And it started fighting against the police. So there was 100% the activism that we have seen there. But in the time, they matured, and also the local authority matured, and really the real estate matured, and they understood that these gardeners were doing a very good job. And even the value of the land was increasing, maybe creating some other problem of gentrification. And at a certain point, they find a way to work together with institutions that instead of sending the police, they understood that this guy was doing something good, and they generate an institution, a sub-part of the gardening and greening department of the city of New York that is called the Green Thumb, that gives some rules. And at the same time, all this created the idea that you could imagine the city in a different way. So you have the small solutions, but afterward you have a dialogue with the institutions. Sometimes some rules have to be given, and a more general vision of what you're doing. So who is digging in the ground of this community garden, do it because he likes to have some green in his own community, but at the same time he feels to be part of a group of people that is improving the quality of the city. At the same time, maybe they think also correctly, in my view, that they are giving a contribution to changing the direction of our evolution. So it's not only solutions. So something else has to be built that is mainly cultural and institutional to create a condition. And therefore, the first example, the heroes are heroes because they are really capable to do something against everything. But if you want to expand it, you cannot ask to everybody to have this kind of heroism. So in some way, you have to reduce the threshold of commitment that is asked to be part. And here we arrive to Uber, that if you design in a bad way this reduction of the threshold to enter in the system, you can distort it and create something that is totally diverse from what was the beginning. Even if Uber is a very accessible carpooling at the end of the day. It's a carpooling that becomes so accessible that has lost totally the original quality on the social dimension. It's clear what I mean. So at that point, nothing is given. We are not living in a simple world. We are living in a world in which the example that we give our prototype, who is designer, know very well that in between the prototype and the final product, there could be a big difference. And at least in my experience, when I was a little bit more linked to this kind of project, the designer had to be very attentive because in the journey from the idea to the prototype that is controlled by the designer, and from the prototype to the final product that is mainly controlled by the company, your idea can be completely betrayed. Now, it's totally diverse. In this case, you cannot talk about one designer that have to control. But I mean, the beginning, there is a group that have a certain inverted comma control on the quality of what they are doing. But it's a prototype. It's very difficult. You have to be very particular condition to do it. When it's successful, other forces arrive, and this prototype become something more consolidated. And there is a control that is not to be activist, that is very fun, it is relatively simple. It's much more difficult and challenging, with all the respect for the activist, but it's very challenging to say, let's study the story of Uber, and let's try to understand if and where there has been some design mistake by our point of view, if and where there has been a possibility, instead of going in the direction where it went, to have something else that could diffuse, but maintaining a certain kind of quality that I think many of us share to be important.
So I hate to cut off this uber interesting conversation, but unfortunately I promised that we would end at 8:30, so I want to be respectful of that. But in the lobby, our lovely Micah bookstore has Ezio's book available. He's going to be out there for those who would like to have a signed copy. So please join me in thanking again Ezio Mancini.